Tetiana got married when she was 20. She, along with her young family, moved to Kyiv. There they bought an apartment. Tetiana's husband was opposed to her going to study or work. Over time, the young woman found herself isolated within her own family. She says, "I could not go anywhere. My husband said all my friends were bad." Tetiana says her husband raised his hand against her, sometimes because she didn't look at him the right way, or she was wearing the wrong trousers. She says, "I apparently answered him using the wrong tone of voice. He did not like it. He hit me until my skull was broken." She wrote a police statement in the hospital, but she says law enforcement failed to follow up on the case. Her husband began to beat her even more. "I only saw him and my legs gave way. I was afraid that I would be paralyzed. It was intolerable." Tetiana says once someone rang the doorbell of their apartment. It was a stranger who so happened to have got the wrong address. She says her husband thought the unknown man was his wife's lover, and he said that he would deal with her later. This threat, this fear of reprisal, led her to run away from home. She says, "I did not know what to do. I was so horrified that I thought I would hang myself. It was very scary." There are many such women as Tetiana. According to international human rights organizations, 1 out of every 5 women in the world suffer from family violence. In Ukraine, there are still no such statistics. Tetiana has been working as a hotline operator for more than 12 years. She says that 90% of all hotline calls concern domestic violence. Once we had a call from a woman who suffered from domestic violence because she had decided to divorce her husband. Her husband beat her when she was pregnant. She did not know how to divorce him because she was afraid of him. But then she realized that after all, it was extremely necessary. This hotline, which deals with issues of family trafficking, violence within the family and gender discrimination, has received 38,000 calls over the past year. The centre's director says this is 14 times more than the number of calls registered in 2015. But this does not mean that the number of victims has increased by 14 times. It is for a simple reason, that people begin to look for a way out of this situation. In addition to physical violence, psychologists also note the growth of other types of abuse. One psychologist, Irina, says the trend of recent times confirms a sort of economic violence. That is, I will not beat you, but I will press you emotionally and morally, psychologically and economically. That is, I'll take you away altogether. Valentina, a pensioner, lived with her husband for 35 years. Then he found another woman who demanded Valentina be evicted from her house. She says they started evicting me from my own house. They proved that I had lived there for 34 years and I did not have common property. My ex-husband made his present wife a deed of gift agreement, and now she's the new owner. The elderly woman was evicted almost to the street. She settled in the shelter of the Kyiv city centre for work with women. Human rights defenders are convinced that Ukraine has to ratify the Istanbul Convention to protect such victims as Tetiana and Valentina. The Istanbul Convention shows at the European level the full force against domestic violence, violence against women. It is gender-specific, and we have a law on its prevention since 2001. Nevertheless, it requires amendments in order to meet international standards. The convention works in countries throughout the world. Ukraine has also signed this document back in 2011, but so far it has not been ratified. Why? Katerina has her own opinion. She says at the first reading, some deputies expressed caution regarding the terminology used in the convention. The stereotype has worked again. In particular, everything related to the word gender. Gender-based violence seems to be connected with same-sex marriages and relations. Tetiana managed to start her life all over again. Now she financially sustains herself, working as a designer for women's clothing. It's stories like these that need to be heard so domestic violence, not just in Ukraine but around the world, is stopped once and for all. This is Tom Bell for UATV.